Want to add a modern quilt to your collection? Today we're making this quilt from this solid fat quarter bundle, so grab your collection and meet me back here. Hi, I'm Crystal from 31 Threads and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm making this quilt from Edimonia Studios and I'm really excited about it. I really love modern quilts and I've been wanting to make this for some time. So I purchased this pattern from Edimonia Studios, and if you want to check them out, they have tons of modern quilt patterns. I particularly like this one. And so a couple of things about this pattern, if you decide to get it, it was $14 and I think it was well worth it. You can make the pattern where it has broken lines. I don't know if you can see that one. Just hold it up here. It can have broken lines, or you can make the pattern like this where the lines are solid. You also have the option, according to the pattern, of making each block its own color, or you could make it even scrappy so that within the block there are multicolors, or you can make the quilt completely two-tone so that all of your blocks are the same color. The quilt also gives you the option, or the pattern rather, gives you the option of making 5 different sizes. So well worth the $14. I've got the pattern here and we're going to get started on this. Now, this is for my sister-in-law. And her color palette, she loves grays and neutral tones, and she's not about real fussy or busy kind of thing. So I think this will be right in her her color wheel. So the fabrics I have chosen are from Art Gallery, and I just thought I would show you a couple of different options. This is the Seedling collection. Now, I have this in my store, but they also have this Seedling collection, and I recently did a quilt out of this one. It has like the olive colors, this terracotta, and some grays in this one. This is a beautiful bundle that is solids from Art Gallery, so you may want to go this route, but any solids would work for this quilt. I've chosen this one, and this is the actual bundle. It has 10 fat quarters in it, and I chose this for 2 reasons. One, it's colors that my sister-in-law will love, but also it has 10 fat quarters, and to do this full queen, the pattern says you need 10 fat quarters, so it's the exact number. Now this one, if you notice, has white in it. I have pulled the white out and I'm going to replace it with an extra one of these colors just because my background will be white. Not exactly white. My background is going to be kind of this off-white, creamy white. And so these are the colors I'm using. It's like pink and almost a lavender type mauve, or mauve, how I'm going to pronounce that color. It also has different shades of gray, which she will love. And for the back of the quilt, I'm choosing this also from Art Gallery, which I carry in my store. I love this collection. It's called Elements Sparkle, or the Sparkle Elements collection, and there are several different colors you can get. This particular one has a real dark charcoal gray, medium gray, and like a little taupey color, which I think will be perfect to go with this. So this will be what the quilt is backed in, and of course I'm just using plain solid like a creamy white for the background. So I'm going to press out these fat quarters and get them nice and flat, and then we'll get started. Now that our fabric is pressed, we're ready to start cutting. Now, while I can't tell you the exact measurements, I can tell you that there's a lot of background fabric for this. The quilt is mostly background fabric, and you'll see that a lot with modern designs. So I'm going to be cutting for just a while. Stick with me. Okay, so that was a lot of cutting. A couple of things I wanted to make you aware of before I moved on and forgot about it. Number one is that the pattern said you needed 10 fat quarters. Once I took the white one out, I only had 9, so I had planned to pull one from another package. I actually did and pressed it and all that, and then realized once I started cutting that you don't use nearly all of each fat quarter. So I was able to put that one back. You won't need 10 fat quarters. The only reason the pattern calls for 10 is so that you can have 10 different colors in it. But in all actuality, you could probably use 6, I think, for that size, because you can get 4 blocks per fat quarter and you need 20 blocks. So I could use 5, half of that, but anyway, so I just wanted to say you don't have to have 10 fat quarters. That's the first thing. The second thing is the background fabric. The pattern said you needed 6 3/4 yards. Now I measured it twice to be sure, and I'm confident that I cut it exactly as the pattern shown, and I did not have any waste. But I used 7 1/4. So there's just a little bit of not sure what's going on there. The error could be on my part, but again, I measured it twice and I cut it exactly as the pattern said. So I used 7 1/4. Now that's including the borders. So maybe the pattern doesn't take that into consideration, but if you're making this pattern, get a little bit of extra, because it did say 6 3/4 and I used a half a yard more. And again, that could be because of the borders. So now that I have all of this cut out, we are ready to start putting these blocks together. I can't tell you the sizes. It's not my pattern. I'm not going to share measurements and all that, but I am excited to start putting the blocks together and see what that looks like. So stick around. Just a couple of things I wanted to say before we go on any further, and that is I would definitely suggest labeling your fabric pieces. I don't always do that, especially when the pattern is really simple, but a couple of these, particularly D and E, are very similar in size, and it would be really easy to mix those up. If you do, it's just going to affect the way everything looks and goes together, and your blocks are going to be off, and I would just go ahead and label those. So the blocks go together the same way. You have 2 of the E, 2 of the D, 2 long pieces, 2 short pieces, and then the C right here is what you're going to see on either side of these. So the blocks are all going to be the same, and then you're just going to flip them like that to make the rows. One other thing I wanted to say about these blocks are that I trimmed them. The pattern does not call for trimming, but guys, my sewing is not perfect. And I always trim, even if it means making it a little smaller. So by trimming these, I'm losing 1/4 of an inch for each block. So in a row of 4, I'm literally only losing 1 inch horizontally in this quilt, and a little over 1 inch vertically in this quilt. And it's worth it to me to have my blocks go together really nice, and my quilt lay very flat on the long arm. So I am trimming the blocks. So you can see how they go together. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 per this one. And then, so the only thing that's different is in this block, you have 2 long strips and a short one. And then in this one, the middle one is long and the 2 outside are short. So very simple how the block goes together. Now I'm going to be sewing on these blocks for a little while, and when I come back, we'll start putting these rows together. I have all of the blocks made, and I've even started sewing a few of them together, but I wanted to take just a second and talk to you about some planning. Planning is really important with this quilt if you're using different colors. Now this is a picture of how the pattern looks, and you can see I've got lines marked through it because as I sewed the blocks, I marked them off. And here's what I want to say: if you're doing a 2-tone quilt, all the background is white and all the stripes are red or something like that, it's not going to really matter that you lay it out beforehand. But I would suggest 2 things with this quilt. One, that you plan beforehand what colors are going where if you're using multiple colors. And here's why. Some of these blocks, as I said before, have 2 long strips and a short one. And then the next one will have 2 short pieces and 1 long one. You can't put, or you shouldn't put, 2 of the same next to each other. So what happens is if you just do a bunch of random colors and then you start trying to lay it out, you're probably gonna have 2 blocks that have the 2 long strips next to each other, or you're gonna have 2 pink blocks together, whatever. The only way to be 100% sure that you can alternate the stripes in the block, the 2 different types of blocks that you're making, because you're making 2 different blocks, and also alternate the colors and not have those beside of each other, is to plan it beforehand. So I planned out what color I wanted where, and that's why you can see these lines as I've marked them out as I did that. The other thing I would suggest is that you mark your rows. So this is row 5 in the quilt, and I have put them together exactly as I want them. There's a gray one, a pink one, and you can see it's turned the opposite way, and a light gray. This was dark gray, pink, light gray, and like a deep purple. So I have those just the way I want them, how I have designed them and laid them out, and then I have them marked. And the reason I have them marked by rows is because I don't even want to tell you how many times I have not marked them and I've got them wrong. I've sewed the rows together wrong. And the only thing worse than taking a block apart is taking an entire row apart. And I can tell you I've done it. So I planned it beforehand as far as the colors, and then I marked every single row. Now these are going to go together super easy because, as I said, I trimmed these blocks. So they are completely even. I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch seam, and on the backs I pressed everything to the side on the blocks. I pressed everything to the side. Now when I start to put the blocks together and the rows together, I'll press open to avoid the bulk. So I'm going to finish putting this row together, and then we'll talk about stacking our rows together. Be right back. This was row 5, the last row, and I just want to take 1 second and tell you, in my opinion, the most important thing that I teach to people learning to quilt, new quilters, and that is pins. Pin. I don't think you can pin enough. And a lot of times new quilters want to skip that step or just use 1 or 2 pins. And I'm telling you, it is the key to everything lining up the right way. Now, because I trimmed these blocks, it wasn't very hard. I put the pins just where these seams are, and they are going to lay nice and flat, I can tell. But now I'm ready to take this row and attach it to the next row, and I'm going to need to pin to get all of these points to line up. So there are 4 blocks in a row, and that's where I'll start. I will start with this block and this block, or this seam to this block and a seam to this block, lining up to the seam to the next one. That's where I put the pins first, and then I will pin it several places in between. So let me just show you what that looks like. Now, I still keep the labels on there. This says row 5. This one will say row 4, row 3, and so on, just because it is still possible, even at this point, for me to mess it up, okay? Now, I'm just going to flip it over, and here's where my seam is going to be. So I've got these lined up already. Here's where my blocks are, and I know this is where I'm going to be joining. I'm just going to go ahead and flip that and put right sides together. And the first places I'm going to pin are going to be right there at where these come together. Now, one more thing I'll say while I'm pinning this, and that is all throughout making these blocks, I sewed a scant quarter-inch seam, just slightly shy of a 1/4 inch. And I did the scant because I knew I was going to be trimming the blocks and losing just a little bit anyway, so I wanted to be conservative with my seams. So I did a scant 1/4 inch. I did that in constructing the blocks and even putting these blocks into rows. The only exception will be when I sew these large rows together. I will use a full 1/4 inch, maybe just a little bit more, because these rows now will take a lot of pulling and tugging, especially when I'm putting it on the long arm. The blocks are pretty much secure at this point, but when I sew these rows together, I will go ahead and do a full 1/4 inch, maybe just a tiny bit more. But as you can see, I'm taking where each block goes together and I'm pinning there first. Once I get those 3 seams completely matched up, just be sure that I've got that exactly matched up, then I will pin in between. Now, as you go in between those 2 seams, if you have places where your top is a little more full than the bottom, or you got a little more fullness on the bottom, just use more pins and try to work that fullness in by spreading the fullness out in between your pins. And you can work in a lot of fullness that way. Trimming your blocks is the key to not having that fullness. I know a lot of people they want to skip that step. And I love it when they write it into a pattern. Most pattern writers don't do that, which means you lose a little bit of inches, but I don't want a quilt that I've not trimmed, because I'm just telling you, I'm not that good. So I'm going to finish pinning this row. Then I'm going to seam it just at least a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more. And I'm going to put all my rows together, and then we'll be ready for the border. We're almost finished. We're in the home stretch, so stick with me. Just like that, through the magic of the camera, we are finished with all the blocks. All I have left are the border pieces. Now, I just wanted to share a really quick tip about the border pieces. in the pattern, it says sew these into long strips, attach them. That's really all it says. And that's, in reality, I guess, all you're actually doing. But have you ever finished a quilt and your quilt lays nice and flat? It's going to be quilted beautifully, but the border is ripply. The reason that happens is because people just take a long strip of fabric, start at the top, put it next to their quilt, put their border next to the quilt, sew all the way down, and then whatever's left of that border piece, they just cut off. When you do that, and you're sewing those two pieces through and they're not pinned, one piece is going through a little bit faster on your machine than the other piece. And so you are sewing in fullness in that border piece. The way to keep that from being ripply is to cut your border strip the exact length. Now I know you're thinking, if I do that, it may wind up 1/4 of an inch short or 1/2 inch short. It won't if you pin it and use lots of pins. So if your quilt is, say, 89.5 inches, cut that border piece exactly 89.5 inches, and then pin it every 5 inches or so, all the way down so that it can't move. By putting the exact same size onto the quilt, you won't have those wavy borders that are a nightmare to quilt on the long arm and just don't look as pretty as the inside of your quilt once it's quilted. So I'm going to sew these together, and then I'm going to cut them the exact length of the quilt, use 1,000 pins, and get these borders on and show you the finished product. If you have not subscribed to my channel, could I ask a small favor that you take just a moment and subscribe to my channel and consider hitting that like button, because when you hit that like button, it pushes this video back out to other people who might want to see it. So if you don't mind, take a minute and like and subscribe. I'm going to get the borders put on here and I'm going to show you the finished product. Thank you. And we are finished. This border has enlarged this quilt another 10 inches. It's a really large quilt. It's taken a substantial amount of time to get it done. It's going to finish at 90 by 110. So just a lot of work went into this one, but it's a simple pattern, and because the blocks are large, it does go pretty quickly actually. Still a lot of work, and you have to forgive me, it's a little wrinkled where I folded it trying to get these borders on. But again, this pattern is called Middle Way, and it's by Edmonia Studios, and I really enjoyed this. It's got lots of ideas on there for baby quilts and how you can do it a little bit differently. So this is my last one before Christmas. I'm not a day too early. I've only given myself one day after this to long arm it, and then one day to get the binding on, and then it's Christmas Eve. So last minute for me. I hope you guys are going to have a great holiday season. I hope you get all of your Christmas sewing done. Thank you for joining me today. Merry Christmas, and see you later.